I first discovered Antonio Machado's immortal poem, The Wind One Brilliant Day, in Robert Bly's collection of timeless poetry and literature entitled The Rag and Bone Shop of the Heart. And like most profound poems, its deceptive depth and meaning took time to bloom. Often with poetry, it's rarely all at once. Sometimes it takes time and reflection over the span of days, months, even years. In the case of Machado's poem, a heartbreaking encounter would finally allow the poem to blossom deep inside of me. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Machado's poem. Born in 1875, Antonio Machado remains one of Spain's greatest poets, and his work is still widely read and celebrated. Machado distanced himself from the modernism of his contemporaries and focused on what he called eternal poetry, that he would argue draws more from intuition than intellect, as evidenced by The Wind One Brilliant Day. Machado died in exile in 1939, but not before leaving the world with his timeless work. Robert Bly once referred to The Wind One Brilliant Day as a poem for men and women who wake up and realize that half of their life is gone. Machado himself had been teaching at a high school for several years when he suddenly felt as though his soul was dead, according to Bly. That inspired him to write the poem. Here it is in full. The wind one brilliant day called to my soul with an odor of jasmine. In return for the odor of my jasmine, I'd like all the odor of your roses. I have no roses. All the flowers in my garden are dead. Well then, I'll take the withered petals and the yellow leaves and the waters of the fountain. The wind left, and I wept, and I said to myself, what have you done with the garden that was entrusted to you? If the poem doesn't resonate with you immediately, give it time. When I first read it, it had yet to strike me as anything but a wistful poem about regret. But a heartbreaking encounter at my menial job would change that entirely. I was working the night shift at a cafe in the heart of Los Angeles. A man in his 50s stumbled through the door, red in the face and haggard. His eyes seemed made of glass, and the smell of alcohol lingered around him like a ghost. I asked if I could get him anything. He said no, and began to openly confess to me unbidden from across the counter about how he'd ruined his life by drinking, abandoned his family, and that his heart was now dead. It was a busy night, but I tried to offer him a few platitudes about hope as I juggled orders and other customers. He staggered back into the saddest smile that I can still see at this very moment and said, I just found out my son hanged himself last night. My words fell around me like useless debris. I could offer him nothing. I clasped his hand and gave him a glass of water. He stumbled out the door, adrift on the shores of grief, looking like Coleridge's Ancient Mariner, except no bird hung around his neck. Instead, his hanged son bore down on him with an impossible weight as he dragged his feet and slowly disappeared down the boulevard. That night after work, I returned to Machado's poem. Suddenly, the full scope and depth of The Wind One Brilliant Day were revealed to me. Our trespasses often confound us, and we condemn ourselves to ruin. Devoid of hope amid the dark menagerie of our failings, we crown despair our king. Machado's poem offers us redemption even amid our sins, our crimes, our trespasses. He reminds us that redemption is always at hand, even during those moments when we awake to find that all the flowers in our garden are dead. The voice of the wind in the poem resounds with bittersweet benevolence and mercy. Certainly one can hear the echo of something far greater than we can imagine high above us in the line, quote, well then, I'll take the withered petals and the yellow leaves and the waters of the fountain, unquote. There are moments in life after so much loss and defeat that we're convinced that we can never be enough or we're never enough. Machado's poem offers a beautiful resignation in those moments that acts as a salve upon our failings and seems to tell us that the whole point of existence is to recognize that something far greater than ourselves is reaching out to us with a constant offer of redemption and hope amid our own defeat and despair. That poor alcoholic soul may have very well been a terrible father, but that's none of my business. That's between him and his Creator. That does not, however, extinguish the hope that redemption and forgiveness from high above or deep within us is always at hand. And Machado's poem, The Wind One Brilliant Day, offers our eyes and heart enough of a glimpse to see and feel it in full, if just for a moment.